This is the Avondale Preserve. It's a magical place that hasn't changed much since colonial times when it was a farm. It exists today because of the dedication of 3 women, led by sometimes controversial environmental activist Hatsie Moore. This is her story.
Good morning, Tom Galuscio here, President of the Westerly Historical Society, with our ongoing program, Reflections. And this morning I have the distinct pleasure of introducing an old-time friend, long-time friend, and resident, Hatsie Moore. Good morning, Hatsie.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Why, it's my pleasure, for sure.
Great. So like I ask everybody when we start these interviews, other than changing the name, how did Hatsie Moore come to be? Tell us a little bit about your paternal and maternal grandparents and parents in the early days.
Well, I came to be on July 21st, 1941, and I am one of 2. I'm a twin. My twin is Betsy and Hatsie, and Hatsie is short for Harriet, but I hated the name Harriet. That was my mother's name, so Hatsie is me for sure. And we were, my parents were Cyril and Harriet Moore. My father worked at the Jersey Moore Company. My mother was from New London, and her family came from Norwich, Connecticut. They were a big family in Norwich. And then I think my father met my mother at one of those Yale get-togethers where friends went down to New Haven, and that's where they got together. And then they bought a house on East Avenue, which they lived in their entire life, and where I was brought up on 150 East Avenue, and that now is the home of Moore Woods, where everybody in Westerly who has a dog walks their dog there. That was a dream of my father's when he set it up back in 1961. He wanted to have a place for, his thought was a place for people in Westerly who had given so much to the factory would have a place to get fresh air and walk their dog, because he had beagles that he walked. And I don't think he ever envisioned the popularity that that place would take today, and I certainly didn't either. My son maintains the place and keeps the paths all in order, but it is amazing to me that the number of people who walk their dogs there, but there's no place to walk your dog in Westerly. The ordinances sort of aren't in favor of people walking their dogs on public property. So that's really one of my father's contributions, because he cared very much about the people who came to Westerly and who worked for the family. Families, generations of families. Sure. Yours, Tom, probably also worked there.
Yeah, I mentioned my grandmother worked at Moore's, was working there the day of the hurricane, 38.
And I'll relate the quick story about the hurricane. Of course, my family had a house on Nappertree Point that was gone. My mother was on the second floor with my sister, my older sister Mary, when the big wave hit and took down the house in one huge wave. They wound up in Pawcatuck on Mr. Davis's farm, and they were found probably 12 or 14 hours later. My mother broke her neck in the process. My father thought she was being psychosomatic because she complained of a headache after the hurricane. That was in 1938. They didn't find the broken neck until 1941. And then she had her neck rebroken and lived through it. But I just can't imagine. They floated from Nappertree Point over to Pawcatuck and were rescued. I've forgotten, there was a man, I think, called Mr. Piccolo, who found them they were in a little cabin on Mr. Davis's farm. So rather traumatic. I think the ironic thing was, which I just learned, they bought that house in November of 1938. And in September the following year, the house was gone.